Tonight on The Struggle, working out what constitutes a safe seat, upskilling politicians to improve their socials, and cashing in on woke sensitivities. Hello and welcome. As you may be able to tell, we've forgotten how to enter our own studio this week, but we weren't the only ones that were a bit geographically challenged, with Prime Minister Scott Morrison mistaking a press conference for Parliament question time.
Of course, Mr Speaker, the issue, Mr Speaker, Mr Speaker, here we go, I'm back in Parliament, there we go.
But it hasn't just been a case of forgetting where we are, but also what year it is, with the leader of the United Australia Party posting this video at the start of 2022.
It's Saturday, the 8th of January 2020.
Look, Craig Kelly spreading misinformation shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, but this isn't just an isolated case, with the initially more reputable ABC also entering the same time warp just last week. Anyway, to actual 2022 news, and Good Friday was anything but for Liberal candidate for Warringah, Catherine Deves, as transphobic comments she made from 2020 to as recently as last November came to light. Her comments ranged from describing trans people as surgically mutilated and sterile, all while comparing her anti-trans activism to fighting Nazis during the Holocaust. Deves has apologised for her harsh language, but not for her beliefs. When asked to weigh in, Prime Minister Scott Morrison refused to join what he called a pylon of criticism against his captain's pick for Warringah. Morrison neglected to address the fact that most of the criticism was coming from within his own party, with New South Wales Treasurer Matt Keane calling on the PM to disendorse Deves. The PM is refusing, spinning the trans hate as Deves valiantly standing up for women and girls and their access to fair sport. For more on the story, here's alpha male Max Payne.
Welcome, bros and broskies, to the Pain Train! Off the rails! This week, I'm headed to Manly, the best suburb of Sydney. Why is it the best suburb? Because it's Manly! Duh! Unfortunately, Manly has been getting a lot of negative attention lately, as it's a part of Warringah. Warringah is an electoral district with about 106,000 voters, currently represented by Zali Steggall, a former Olympian skier who beat the odds and got an Olympic bronze medal. And odd is probably the best word I have to describe Warringah. Used to be represented by the mad monk Tony Abbott. Now, it's all been downhill skiing since he left. But that's where I come in, folks. I'm here to give Warringah residents an opportunity to defend Manly's reputation, because I know a thing or two about defending a Manly reputation. This thing on. Sorry, broskies. I was having so much fun. I totally forgot what I was supposed to be doing here. Interviews, I think? I even get any interviews? I also don't know where my shirt went. But what I do know is that Manly knows how to party! Back to you, Ren!
Thanks for nothing, Max, and feel free to stay in Sydney for as long as you like. Seriously, no rush. With the election less than a month away, the race is on to secure marginal seats all across the country. So let's gauge how the battle is progressing in one nearby electorate.
Thanks, Ren. I'm currently in the streets of Melbourne's inner east seat of Kooyong, where the contest between Federal Treasurer Josh Frydenberg and independent candidate Monique Ryan is becoming increasingly tight. While Kooyong has traditionally been a safe seat for Liberals, recent polls show the electorate is facing a sharp swing away from the incumbent government. So today I'm venturing into people's homes to find just how safe this seat really is. Excuse me, ma'am, how safe is this seat?
What seat?
The seat you're sitting on right now.
This seat?
Yeah, do you realise it's no longer a safe seat?
No.
Do you think Frydenberg will hold on to his seat or will it fall to Ryan? Ryan from school. Is this a safe seat?
This seat is swinging as much as an open relationship.
Well, turns out the seat of Kooyong is not as safe as residents might think.
Hard-hitting political insights. Well, with the weather in Melbourne looking meh, let's cast our minds further north to the Sunshine State.
For the past 2 trips around the sun, we haven't just been divided by the ocean and 50 years of social progress, but also the tragedy of COVID-19. With these trying times almost in the rearview mirror, we're overjoyed to welcome New Zealanders back to our glistening beaches, vibrant cities, and, because we apparently have to mention this now, rich Indigenous history. Enjoy yesteryear without fear by escaping into one of our sleepy country towns where crocodile attacks are still more abundant than LGBT riots. Our Sunshine State doesn't just thrive on nostalgia though, but also community. Just take a look at this review from one of our BOLS long-term guests. Would have loved to stay here longer. Sadly, our visit was ended abruptly. That's one from the Murugapan family, now a household name. If these positive reviews still haven't got you booking flights, perhaps your civic curiosity will. Recently labeled the home of political mavericks, our gorgeous state is excited to offer some exciting opportunities with our world-class leaders. For a limited time, you'll be able to indulge your wildest racist fantasies and build a burqa with Pauline Hanson. If you're craving a touch of ignorant bliss, you'll love Barnaby Joyce's Crash Course. But it was cold today, fighting the climate cult. It was actually Mr. Joyce who authorized us to shoot here from Melbourne's Royal Botanic Gardens and bring to your screens such colorful sights as those behind me. Once a trademark of Queensland's now bleached reefs. Though we usually put the "and" in "cannot stand" anywhere or anyone but ourselves, we're finally ready to open our arms and hearts at, oh, I kinda need this more than you right now. Where was I? Oh dear. To the neighborly people of New Zealand. My Queensland can also be your Queensland, but remember not to stay for too long. You know how we feel about refugees.
You've sold me. We're off to a quick break. Welcome back. Election campaigning takes pollies to a whole range of places beyond the natural habitat, with Anthony Albanese recently winding up on stage at Blues Fest in Byron Bay. While there were no cries for an encore, this isn't Albo's first foray into the musical world this campaign, having already adopted Taylor Swift's 3-word slogan.
Here's a Taylor Swift comment for you. My theory is shake it off.
But, given a mic and a backing track, who knows what the opposition leader might belt out next? To remind himself to spruik clear policies, he might draw inspiration from Drake and burst out one stance. Better yet, maybe he could pop on some Gale and give a shout out to all his supporters at the ABCF MEU. Or perhaps he could try and reclaim his unemployment rate gaffe with his own rendition of 4-5 seconds.
What's the national unemployment rate?
National unemployment rate at the moment is 5.4
seconds from wildin'.
Catchy. Anyway, let's now head to a context where the difference between the numbers 4 and 5 can make quite a big difference.
Thanks, Ren. This week, some groundbreaking research has come across my desk.
In an international study of average penis size, Australia has, well, come up short, receiving a ranking of 43rd biggest in the world. With an average of 14.5 centimetres, we are just above the global average, but we're no competition for Ecuador, which came in first place with a very respectable average of 24.4 centimetres. Now, when I came across this hard-hitting research, I asked myself, how on earth was this data collected? The mind wanders. But as a serious researcher, first and foremost concerned with academic integrity, I have my doubts. If we look at the definition of academic integrity, it's all about trust and honesty. This leaves us with a few lingering questions. Were the participants honest about their measurements? How rigorous was the experimental conditions? And does this mean the average Aussie man isn't as big a dick as we thought? Well, regardless of the study's validity, I hope the researchers find a good use for their findings, because at the end of the day, it's all about how you use it.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Now it's time to hear from the federal government's empathy coach, Jenny.
Thanks, Ren, sweetie. As usual, I started this week off by going through the basic media management training with Scott. Nod like you care, only answer the question that you want to answer, and only allow people that are on our side into the media room. I thought all of these were simple enough to consider, until of course we started having a few incidents. Too many people were having the opportunity to ask questions that didn't appear to be on our side. A lot of these people were young and were always filming. Weird. You see, Scott didn't seem to handle this very well, unfortunately. In all the clips I've seen, he appears to be wanting to ditch the situation and, well, run. I don't think that's too empathetic if you ask me.
Scott, across the river here, across the Nepean River, people lost their houses, and they were burnt. You're a disgrace. You are a disgrace.
I had an odd feeling this wasn't going to be very good, so I did a little bit more research and found that a lot of these videos were ending up on the dark side of the internet, TikTok. I say the dark side because this is very unfortunate for Scott. Unlike some of the other parties that have been very active on TikTok, the Liberal Party just hasn't really been on it much. That's why I thought this would be the perfect place to get Scott beginning to connect with the younger generation. Instead of running away in these videos or bringing in the armed forces, Scott should just start doing a TikTok trend of some sort. Forget about answering the question. Doing the renegade will really help him seem more relatable. I mean, that's a popular one right now, isn't it? Desensitisation to phone classes have now begun with Scott, and they're going, well, interestingly. While he doesn't seem to be running away anymore, we've really got to figure out a way for him to be able to seem more likeable to the younger generation. That's going to be a tough one.
Good to hear, Jenny. Well, let's now head over to Karen Kvetch from Neighbourhood Watch for her gripe of the week.
I frequently walk the streets of Brighton, and typically my walks are peaceful and tranquil. But that was not the case this morning, as I stumbled upon the monstrosities that you can see here and here. How dare these hooligans tarnish my neighbourhood with their graffiti? I would expect this kind of behaviour in Frankston or Sunshine, but not here. Earlier this week, crime statistics may have shown that the City of Melbourne is Victoria's graffiti capital, but I will not tolerate it here in Bayside. I simply cannot understand why one would graffiti in the first place. But if you are going to do it, you might as well do a good job. I cannot even understand what this says. And I want these criminals to know that as the president of the Neighbourhood Watch, I have many resources at my disposal, and I am not afraid to use them. I have orchestrated many stakeouts in my time, trying to keep crime at bay in Brighton. And it seems I am being forced to organise another one. So watch out, because me and my fellow Neighbourhood Watch board members will be on the lookout. We will catch the scum that are destroying the pristine suburb of Brighton, because their behaviour is unacceptable, and I will not tolerate it.
Karen Kvetch, the scum police, reporting there. Anyway, it's time for another break. Welcome back. Now it's time for a look at the latest trending trend. Over to you, Steph.
Thanks, Ren. Last week, a Kentucky man successfully sued his former employer for throwing him an unwanted birthday party, walking away with a whopping $450,000. Though some in the industry are worried this will set a scary precedent for workplaces, it got me thinking. Us, millennials and Gen Z, are always being raked through the coals for our hypersensitivity and woke culture. So why not transform this into the perfect investment opportunity? If you're looking into taking initiative, kickstart your finances, and make a quick buck, then the Snowflake Sue might be just the thing for you. Sick of cafes that still charge more for soy milk and vegan cheese? Snowflake Sue them. Are you tired of those people who bulldoze onto public transport while you're still stumbling off? The solution? Snowflake Sue. Disturbed by men who think dead fish and quoting The Office are turn-ons? You've guessed it, Snowflake Sue, right now. And politicians who pretend their transphobia is a feminist awakening? Oh, wait. This might actually be a bit of a stretch. I doubt you have a successful case there. But as long as you steer clear of holding our leaders accountable, I'm positive you'll be making it rain in no time. We might not be able to just take a joke, but neither will your racist uncle when he's coughing up compensation for comments made at last year's Christmas barbecue. That's all from me this week. Don't forget to sue. Back to you, Ren.
Thanks, Steph. Moving on, and with Labor announcing it won't pursue a vote on whether Australia should ditch the monarchy and become a republic in its first term, we thought it to be an opportune time to speak with the chair of the Australian Republic movement, Peter FitzSimons.
Welcome, Peter.
Thank you.
So, does the story of ANZAC feed into your passion for Australia becoming a republic?
That's a very interesting question, and the short answer is yes. Look, it's a bit of a cliche to talk about the Brits using our blokes for cannon fodder, but the truth of it is, if you go to the Battle of Fromelles, for example, which is the most scarifying story I've ever worked on, we had, the British orders were for our soldiers, 7,000 soldiers, to charge 400 yards across swampy open ground in daylight straight at German machine guns. The Australian General, Pompey Elliott, brings the British commander from HQ, the representative of the British command, British HQ, and says, what do you think will happen to my men if they charge at those guns? And he says, I don't like to talk like that. He said, well, I'm asking you. And he said, well, if you're asking me, I think it'll be a bloody Holocaust. Those were the words he used. This, of course, being before the Second World War, Holocaust, which is a very emotionally powerful word. That's what he said. And what happens is, and Pompey Elliott, the Australian, says, we'll get the orders changed. They weren't changed. 7,000 of our blokes go forward, and in the next 14 hours, 5,500 take a bullet, 1,900 men died. We didn't take a single yard of territory. So that, when I read that kind of stuff, it does boil up inside me. The horror. You bastards, you're using it. You used us as fodder.
I know that you've written 2 books, deeply investigating ANZAC Day, and those involved in a relationship with it. And one of them being about Sir John Monash, after whom our university is named.
Well, it's interesting, Sir John Monash, you mentioned Sir John Monash, and he certainly also informed my republicanism, because Sir John Monash was a genius. There's no doubt about it. He was an engineering genius. He was a military genius. And the interesting thing about that is, for the first 4 years of the Great War, which 1914 to early 1918, for the first 3.5 years, the Australian diggers are doing brilliantly in area that you put them, in every battlefield from Gallipoli to the Western Front, they performed above and beyond. And after 3.5 years of this, the idea was put forward, look, seeing as we're Australians fighting under in the Australian uniform, fighting for the Australian Army, what do you say we put an Australian general in charge? There was an outcry. You can't have Australians being ordered around by Australians. It has to be an Englishman. It's got to be an English general. Anyway, in the end, Monash won, and Monash was put in charge, and he was brilliant from the first battle he was in charge of. Instead of losing the usual 2,000 soldiers taking 50 yards of ground, they only lost 300 soldiers, and they took 1.5 miles because he cared about the soldiers. He wasn't using him as fodder. He got tanks to do the heavy lifting. He used artillery brilliantly. And again, yes, that did inform and empower and make me more passionate for an Australian Republic.
Okay. So what about the Queen? Did you learn more about the Queen at uni, during your time at uni?
I don't remember. Well, look, I suppose when I did legal institutions in 1980, that was the first time I really understood about things like the Constitution. And I think probably realised for the first time that the actual head of state of Australia, believe it or not, is the Queen of England. And I suppose that was the first time I looked at it and went, what? But maybe I'm dreaming that part, because it really only was 10 years later that I really started to look at the complete absurdity of having an English family reigning over Australia. I mean, it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. It is undignified for a sovereign nation to say we can't run our own show. We need to have a family of blue bloods from England living in a palace in London reigning over us. And this is no disrespect to the Queen of England. We wish her well at the Republic movement. We wish her a long life, and I wish her, particularly lately, I hope she overcomes the battles of ill health she's had. We don't want to become a republic because she's passed away. We want to become a republic because, we're a sovereign people that say we've got to get ourselves organised on this. We're about to go in a federal election. There'll be a whole slew of new MPs. They're going to have to go dib, 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 dob, dob, dob. I swear allegiance to the Queen of England. What? Outrageous.
Insightful. Let's now turn our attention to political aspirant, Brighton mum, Linda Crawford. Oh, hello, darlings. Today I am joining you from the Botanical Gardens. Quite gorgeous, isn't it? Yeah. This week I'm holding a fundraiser for my sustainability campaign. Government-funded Botox for women over 40. If we are to face a future riddled with natural disasters that climate change continues to throw our way, we need to face a future with confidence. We need to face it with Botox, people. Now, for my fundraiser, I've opted for a tea party. Why? Well, it's how the royals do it, darling. Plain and simple. Look at them. Class, elegance, sophistication, and beauty. I mean, if I'm being really honest with you, darling, the real reason why I wanted to go into politics in the first place was so I could be more like the royal family. I would get to be the face of change without really having to do all that much, and I'd be famous. I mean, don't get me wrong, darling. These weekly interviews are fabulous and all, but I want more people to know who Linda Crawford is than just the people who watch Channel 31, Now, some people are wanting to make Australia a republic. Make our nation's supreme power an elected Australian representative, not a rich family over in another country. But why should we do that? Why should Australians have a choice about who speaks for us as head of state? When we've had the opportunity to pick important people to lead us forward in the past, we've, picked people like ScoMo and Abbott. I'd much rather have the Queen sign off on Australian matters, even if she does live in an entirely different country. She's an icon, darling. And why shouldn't we continue to allow the position of head of state to just be handed down from one generation of royals to another? I mean, yes, it's undemocratic and complete nepotism, but I mean, isn't politics also complete nepotism, darling? I mean, that's what I've heard. I'm kind of counting on it. And lastly, why should we have an actual Australian representative, representing our country? Sure, it might be nice to have someone who actually lives here have a say about, the decisions for our country, but I'd much rather have my future in the Queen's capable hands. I mean, look at the way she cuts that cake, darling.
I think I might just put a knife in it.
I think that's a really good idea.
see if it works. Oh yes, it goes in beautifully. Somebody else can finish it off, do the rest of it.
We can only hope she puts that much effort into representing Australia. If we get rid of the royals, who will be on the front of my Women's Weekly? I mean, they're still printing that, aren't they? Anyway, my royal-inspired tea party is going brilliantly. Thank you for asking. Back to you, Ren. Linda Crawford, talking about the issues that matter most. Anyway, that brings us to the end of the show. With certain politicians avoiding unstaged interactions with the public, it may be handy to bring your own Mr. Speaker with you to increase your chances of getting a response. Because apparently, our Pollies would rather speak to anyone or anything than the people directly in front of them. Until next week, the struggle, it's real.